The ships appeared without warning on a cold Tuesday morning in March. Commander Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck of Orbital Station Prime, her coffee growing cold in her hands as she watched the tactical display. 40 red dots had materialized at the edge of Earth's sensor range. 40 warships, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. Each one bristling with weapons that could turn cities into glass. The Varthon Empire had finally come. Sarah had spent her entire career preparing for this day. 20 years of service, countless drills, endless simulations. None of it had prepared her for the cold weight that now settled in her stomach. She reached for the communication panel and opened a channel to Earth. "This is Orbital Prime to United Earth Council. We have contact. Varthon Battle Fleet, 40 vessels, approaching Earth orbit. Estimated arrival time, 6 hours. The response came quickly, too quickly. They had been expecting this. Acknowledged, Commander. Maintain observation. Do not engage. Repeat. Do not engage under any circumstances." Sarah almost laughed at that. Engage? With what? Earth's entire orbital defense network consisted of 3 patrol ships and a handful of automated satellites. Against a single Varthon cruiser, they might last 5 minutes. Against 40 warships, they would not last 5 seconds. 6 hours later, the Varthon fleet took up position in high orbit around Earth. They arranged themselves in a perfect sphere, each ship covering a different section of the planet below. It was a formation designed for planetary bombardment. A formation designed to leave no survivors. The message came on every frequency, in every language, broadcast to every screen and speaker on the planet. "People of Earth, I am High Marshal Dren of the Varthon Empire. Your world now falls under Imperial jurisdiction. You will surrender unconditionally within 72 hours. Your governments will dissolve. Your military forces will disarm. Your resources will become property of the Empire. This is not a negotiation. This is a statement of fact." The face on the screens was reptilian, with scales of deep purple and eyes like burning amber. High Marshal Dren looked down at the camera with the casual contempt of a god addressing insects. "Failure to comply will result in planetary cleansing. You have 72 hours. Use them wisely." The transmission ended. Across Earth, billions of people stared at their screens in stunned silence. In coffee shops and living rooms, in offices and factories, the same thought passed through every mind. This is how it ends. The United Earth Council convened within the hour. 12 men and women gathered in a bunker beneath Geneva, their faces gray with exhaustion and fear. President Maria Santos sat at the head of the table, her hands folded in front of her with practiced calm. "Options?" she said simply. General Morrison, commander of Earth's combined military forces, spoke first. "We have none, Madam President. Our weapons can't scratch their shields. Our ships can't match their speed. If we fight, we die. All of us." "The Galactic Concord," suggested Ambassador Williams. "We're member species. Surely they'll intervene." They already responded. Foreign Minister Nakamura pulled up a document on the central display, and I quote, "The Galactic Concord expresses deep concern regarding Varthon military action in the Sol system. However, given the current political situation, direct intervention is not possible at this time. We urge all parties to seek peaceful resolution." Translation, muttered General Morrison. "You're on your own." President Santos closed her eyes for a long moment. When she opened them, something had changed in her expression. Something hard and cold had replaced the fear. "Clear the room," she said quietly. Everyone except General Morrison and Admiral Chen Wei-lin. The other council members exchanged confused glances but obeyed. When the door closed behind them, Santos reached beneath the table and pressed a hidden switch. The lights flickered, and the walls hummed with sudden electromagnetic interference. "Secure channel established," announced a computerized voice. Admiral Chen Wei-lin, a woman in her 60s with silver hair and eyes like chips of obsidian, leaned forward. "It's time then. God help us," whispered Morrison. "I hoped we'd never have to use it." "That hope died 6 hours ago." Santos turned to Chen Wei-lin. "Admiral, you have authorization. Activate the Morrigan." Chen Wei-lin nodded slowly. She pulled a device from her pocket, a simple black cylinder no larger than a pen. She pressed her thumb to the sensor on its side, and a green light blinked once. "Signal sent," she said. They'll receive it in 4 hours. Will 4 hours be enough time? It will have to be. Far from Earth, in the cold darkness of the asteroid belt, something ancient received the signal. Deep within a hollowed-out rock 3 kilometers wide, lights flickered to life for the first time in decades. Computers that had been sleeping since before most of the crew was born began their awakening sequences. Power systems hummed as they drew energy from reactors that had waited patiently for this moment. And in a cabin near the heart of the asteroid, Captain Yuki Tanaka opened her eyes. She had been dreaming of her grandmother, of the stories the old woman used to tell about the time before the Concorde, when humanity looked up at the stars and wondered if they were alone. They had found their answer eventually. They were not alone, and the universe was not friendly. Tanaka swung her legs out of bed and reached for her uniform. Black fabric, no insignia, no rank markers, nothing to identify the ship or its crew, nothing to connect them to official human military forces. That was the point. She walked through corridors that had been empty for years, past doors that led to weapons bays and engineering sections and crew quarters. The Morrigan was waking up around her, systems coming online one by one. By the time she reached the bridge, most of her senior officers were already there. "Report," she said, settling into the captain's chair. Commander James Okonkwo, her first officer, pulled up the tactical display. Signal confirmed from Earth Command. Authorization code verified. We are weapons free. What's the situation? Varthon battle fleet, 40 vessels, currently in orbit around Earth. Standard Imperial formation for planetary subjugation. They've given humanity 72 hours to surrender. How long do we have? 68 hours remaining. Tanaka nodded slowly. 68 hours. More than enough time. The Morrigan could reach Earth in 12 hours at full burn. They could have reached it in 6 if she pushed the engines, but there was no need. Let the Varthon wait. Let them grow confident. Let them believe that Earth had no answer to their demands. Begin pre-flight checks, she ordered. I want all systems at full readiness within the hour. And wake the crew. All of them. All 200, Captain? All 200. They've trained their whole lives for this. They deserve to be awake when we finally do our jobs. As her officers hurried to obey, Tanaka allowed herself a moment of reflection. She had been born on this ship. Her mother had served here, and her grandmother before that. 6 generations of her family had lived and died on the Morrigan, maintaining it, improving it, waiting for a day that everyone prayed would never come. The day had come. She thought about the people of Earth, billions of souls going about their lives, unaware that humanity's last hope rested in the hands of 200 people they had never heard of, on a ship that officially did not exist. They would learn soon enough. The whole galaxy would learn. Captain, Okonkwo's voice interrupted her thoughts. The crew is assembling in the main hangar. They're waiting for you. Tanaka stood and straightened her uniform. She had given many speeches over the years, during training exercises and simulations and drills. But this would be different. This would be real. She made her way to the hangar, where 200 men and women stood in perfect rows. They ranged in age from 20 to 60, every one of them born and raised on the Morrigan, every one of them dedicated to a single purpose. They watched her with eyes full of determination, and something else, something like relief. The waiting was finally over. For 6 generations, Tanaka began, her voice echoing through the vast space. Our families have lived in the shadows. We have trained. We have prepared. We have watched as humanity joined a galaxy that sees us as primitives, as children, as insignificant specks unworthy of notice or respect. She paused, letting the words sink in. Today, that changes. Today, an empire of conquerors threatens our homeworld. They believe Earth is defenseless. They believe humanity will kneel. They are wrong. A murmur ran through the assembled crew. We are the Morrigan. We are the answer to every threat humanity has ever faced. And today, we will teach the Varthon Empire why our ancestors learned to fear the dark. She raised her hand in salute. To your stations. In 12 hours, we show the galaxy what humanity really is. The crew dispersed in orderly silence, each person moving to their assigned position with the precision of years of training. Tanaka returned to the bridge and settled into her chair as the ship hummed to life around her. On the main display, she could see the distant blue dot that was Earth. Somewhere out there, 40 warships waited to destroy everything humanity had built. Their commanders probably felt confident, victorious even. They had no idea what was coming. "Helm," said Tanaka quietly. "Set course for Earth, full stealth, and engage when ready." The Morrigan began to move, sliding through the asteroid belt like a shadow through darkness. It made no sound, emitted no radiation, left no trace of its passage. The black ship was rising, and the galaxy would never be the same. 150 years before the Varthon fleet arrived at Earth, a radio telescope in Chile detected something that changed everything. The signal came from a star system 40 light-years away. It was clearly artificial, clearly intentional, and clearly meant to be heard. Scientists around the world celebrated. Politicians gave speeches about a new era of human history. Religious leaders debated the implications for their faiths. But in a quiet room beneath the Pentagon, a group of military officers and intelligence analysts looked at the same data and felt only cold dread. "If they can send signals," said General Marcus Webb, "they can send ships. Perhaps they're peaceful," suggested one of the scientists who had been brought in for consultation. "Perhaps," Webb's voice was flat, "and perhaps they're not. We've spent our entire history fighting each other over land and resources. What happens when someone shows up who sees our entire planet as land and resources?" The debate lasted 3 days. When it ended, a new program was born. It had no official name, no budget line in any government document, no acknowledgement from any agency. It existed only in the minds of those who knew about it, passed down from generation to generation, like a sacred trust. They called it the Morrigan Project, after the ancient goddess of war and fate. The plan was simple in concept and nearly impossible in execution. Humanity would join whatever galactic community existed out there. They would smile and trade and cooperate. They would appear harmless, primitive, unworthy of attention or concern. And in secret, they would build a weapon so terrible that no empire, no matter how powerful, would ever dare threaten Earth again. It took 6 generations to complete. The first generation chose the location, a large asteroid in the belt between Mars and Jupiter, far from shipping lanes and casual observation. They hollowed out the rock and installed the basic infrastructure: living quarters, life support, power generation, a place where people could live and work in total secrecy. The second generation began work on the ship itself. They recruited the finest engineers on Earth, people who could be trusted to disappear from normal life and dedicate themselves to a project they could never speak about. The engineers worked from specifications that seemed like science fiction, plans drawn up by theorists who dreamed of technologies that didn't yet exist. The third generation solved the power problem. Conventional reactors couldn't provide the energy the Morrigan would need. They developed something new, something based on principles that the rest of humanity's scientists wouldn't discover for another century. A contained singularity, a black hole the size of a grain of sand, spinning at relativistic speeds and producing more power than a small star. The fourth generation built the weapons, not lasers or missiles or kinetic impactors, the crude tools of conventional warfare. The Morrigan's weapons worked on principles that even its creators didn't fully understand: gravity manipulation, electromagnetic disruption, systems that could disable a warship without destroying it, that could render an enemy helpless without killing a single crew member. The fifth generation developed the stealth systems. The Morrigan needed to be invisible, not just to radar and LiDAR, but to every form of detection the galaxy had ever invented. They created materials that absorbed all radiation, drives that produced no detectable emissions, countermeasures that could fool any sensor ever built. The sixth generation was born to crew the ship. Captain Yuki Tanaka was 3 years old when she first saw the Morrigan. Her mother, then a junior engineer on the project, carried her through the construction bay and pointed at the massive black shape taking form in the void. "That's your future," her mother said. "That's what you'll protect someday." Tanaka grew up on the asteroid, learning to walk in artificial gravity, learning to read from technical manuals, learning to fight from veterans who had trained their whole lives for a war that might never come. By the time she was 20, she could operate every system on the ship. By 30, she could command any station on the bridge. By 40, she was captain, and for 20 years after that, she had waited. The waiting was the hardest part. Every day, She checked the communication systems for the signal that would activate the Morrigan. Every night, she went to sleep hoping it would never come. The ship was fully operational, its crew fully trained, its weapons fully charged. But as long as the signal stayed silent, as long as no enemy threatened Earth, the Morrigan could remain sleeping in the dark. Now, as the ship accelerated toward Earth, Tanaka walked through its corridors and remembered all the years of preparation. The endless drills, the simulated battles, the theoretical scenarios her instructors had devised to test every aspect of the ship's capabilities. None of them had prepared her for how calm she felt. She stopped at the main engineering bay, where Chief Engineer David Nakamura was running final checks on the power systems. The man was the same age as Tanaka, and they had known each other since childhood. His family had been part of the project for as long as hers. "How's our heart?" Tanaka asked, nodding toward the shielded chamber at the center of the bay. "The singularity is stable. Power output is at optimal levels. We could run at full combat power for 6 months without refueling. Let's hope it doesn't come to that." Nakamura smiled grimly. "You really think we can do this without killing anyone?" "That's the plan. The Varthon might not cooperate with the plan. Then we'll have to be persuasive." She continued her walk, stopping at the weapons bay where Lieutenant Commander Aisha Obi was overseeing the preparation of the primary armament. The Morrigan carried no missiles, no torpedoes, none of the conventional weapons that filled the arsenals of galactic warships. Instead, it carried systems that had never been used in actual combat, designed by scientists who had only theoretical understanding of their effects. "Gravity projectors are calibrated and ready," Obi reported. "EMP emitters at full charge. Electronic warfare suites, standing by." "And the main weapon?" Obi hesitated. "Ready, Captain. But I hope we don't have to use it." The main weapon was the Morrigan's ultimate deterrent. A device that could, in theory, tear a ship apart at the molecular level without leaving a trace of wreckage. They had tested it on asteroids and derelict satellites, watched as solid matter simply ceased to exist. No one wanted to use it on a crewed vessel. "If we do our job right," Tanaka said, "we won't have to." She finished her rounds and returned to the bridge, where Commander Okonkwo was monitoring their approach. The tactical display showed Earth growing larger by the minute, and the 40 red dots of the Varthon fleet surrounding it like a noose. "Anything from the Empire?" Tanaka asked. "High Marshal Dren has broadcast 2 more ultimatums. Earth has been silent except for a formal request for more time to coordinate the surrender. Admiral Chen is buying us time." "Looks like it." The Varthon seem confident. They haven't even run any serious scans of the solar system. They think they've already won. Tanaka settled into her chair and studied the display. 40 ships, each one crewed by thousands of Varthon soldiers, each one capable of rendering entire cities into ash. Under normal circumstances, a single one of those ships could conquer Earth without difficulty. But these were not normal circumstances. Time to Earth orbit, 8 hours at current speed. Increase to 3/4 power. I want to arrive with time to spare. Aye, Captain. The Morrigan surged forward, its advanced drives pushing it through space at speeds that would have been impossible for any other human vessel. And still it remained invisible. A ghost sliding through the void, a shadow approaching the light. In her quarters that night, Tanaka reviewed the intelligence files on High Marshal Dren. The Varthon commander had conquered 12 worlds personally, overseeing the subjugation of billions of sentient beings. He was known for his tactical brilliance, his absolute loyalty to the Empire, and his complete lack of mercy. He was also known for his arrogance. The Varthon believed themselves to be the apex predators of the galaxy. For 5,000 years, they had expanded their empire through conquest and intimidation. They had never encountered a species that could seriously resist their military might. They had certainly never encountered a species that could defeat them. That was about to change. Tanaka pulled up a star map showing the extent of Varthon territory. 300 star systems, billions of soldiers, thousands of warships, an empire that had crushed every opponent it had ever faced. And now they had come for Earth. She thought about the people down there, the billions of humans going about their lives, trying to pretend that everything was normal. Most of them had no idea what was about to happen. They didn't know about the Morrigan, didn't know about the 6 generations of sacrifice that had built it, didn't know that 200 people were racing toward them with the power to change everything. They would know soon. Tanaka closed her files and tried to sleep. In 6 hours, the Morrigan would reach Earth. In 6 hours, she would lead her crew into battle against an empire that had never known defeat. In 6 hours, humanity would stop pretending to be harmless. The dreams came anyway. Dreams of her mother, showing her the ship for the first time. Dreams of her instructors, pushing her to master every system, every tactic, every contingency. Dreams of the moment, years ago, when she had taken the captain's chair and sworn to protect Earth with her life. She woke to the sound of alarms. "Captain, to the bridge. We have a situation." Tanaka was in her chair within minutes, still pulling on her jacket as she scanned the displays. The Varthon fleet was moving, repositioning into a tighter formation around Earth. "What's happening?" Okonkwo's face was tense. "They've moved up the timetable. High Marshal Dren just broadcast a new message. He's giving Earth 6 hours to surrender, not 72. Why the change? Unknown, but his ships are powering weapons. Whatever his reason, he's not bluffing." Tanaka stared at the display. 6 hours. They were still 4 hours from Earth. If the Varthon started firing before they arrived, "Increase to maximum speed," she ordered. "All stealth protocols remain active. We need to get there before they start shooting." The Morrigan leaped forward, pushing its drives to their limits. The ship groaned slightly as G-forces pressed against its frame, then stabilized as the inertial dampeners compensated. They would make it. They had to make it, and when they arrived, the Varthon would learn what happened when you threatened humanity's home. High Marshal Dren stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Conquest, and watched the blue world turning slowly beneath him. Earth. Such a small planet to cause such trouble. For 2 centuries, humanity had been a minor irritation to the Varthon Empire. They had joined the Galactic Concord before the Empire could reach their system, gaining the protection of interstellar law. They had stayed quiet, kept to themselves, and given no excuse for military intervention. But the Empire was patient. And now, with the Concord weakened by decades of political infighting, the time had finally come. Earth would fall, and with it, another species would learn the simple truth of galactic civilization. The strong ruled, and the weak obeyed. "High Marshal." His aide approached with a datapad. "Earth Command has requested more time to coordinate the surrender." Dren's lips curled in contempt. "They're stalling. Perhaps they simply need time to." "They are stalling." Dren cut him off with a gesture. "I've conquered 12 worlds. I know how prey behaves when it's trapped. They're not preparing to surrender. They're waiting for something." What could they possibly be waiting for? They have no fleet, no allies, no options. Dren didn't answer. He had achieved his rank by trusting his instincts, and his instincts were screaming at him now. Something was wrong. Earth's leaders were too calm, too composed. They should have been begging, offering bribes, trying to negotiate. Instead, they were politely asking for more time, as if this were some minor bureaucratic matter. "Move up the timetable," he ordered. "Inform Earth that they have 6 hours to surrender. If they refuse, we begin bombardment immediately." "High Marshal, the Emperor's orders were to." "The Emperor is not here. I am. 6 hours." His aide hurried to carry out the order. Dren turned back to the viewport, staring at Earth with narrowed eyes. Whatever they were hiding, whatever they were planning, it wouldn't be enough. The Varthon Empire had crushed species far more advanced than humanity. These primitives were no different. 3 hours passed. Then 4. Earth remained silent, neither surrendering nor resisting. Dren's unease grew with every minute. "High Marshal." The tactical officer's voice carried a note of confusion. "We're detecting something. Edge of our sensor range. I'm not sure what it is." Dren moved to the tactical station. "Explain." "There's something there, but I can't get a clear reading. It keeps flickering in and out of our sensors. Almost like..." "Like what?" "Like it's not really there." Dren stared at the display. A single contact, approaching from the outer system at impossible speed. One moment the sensors registered it. The next moment they showed empty space. It was as if the thing was moving through reality itself. "All ships, battle alert," he ordered. "Whatever that is, I want a full analysis before it gets any closer." The Varthon fleet shifted from occupation formation to combat readiness. Weapons systems powered up. Shields activated. Targeting computers locked onto the mysterious contact, and then the contact disappeared entirely. Where did it go? Dren demanded. Unknown, High Marshal. It was there, and then it simply wasn't. Dren's scales prickled with sudden fear. In 5,000 years of conquest, the Varthan had never encountered anything their sensors couldn't track. They had the most advanced detection technology in the galaxy, systems refined over millennia of warfare. Something was here that defied all of that technology. Find it, he growled. Every ship, maximum sensor sweep. Find it now. Before his officers could respond, the communications panel lit up. An incoming transmission, broadcast on every Varthan frequency. A woman's face appeared on the screen. Human, middle-aged, eyes like chips of black glass. High Marshal Dren, she said calmly. My name is Captain Yuki Tanaka, of the Earthship Morrigan. I am requesting that you withdraw your fleet from our solar system immediately. This will be your only warning. Dren laughed despite his unease. You're requesting? You dare make demands of the Varthan Empire? With what? With this. The tactical display exploded with alarms. Suddenly, where there had been empty space, a ship appeared. Dren stared at it in disbelief. The thing was enormous, larger than his flagship by half. It was shaped like nothing he had ever seen, all angles and edges, as if someone had carved it from pure darkness. It absorbed every beam of light that touched it, appearing as a wound in the fabric of space itself. It sat directly in the center of his fleet formation, where no ship could possibly have arrived without being detected. And yet there it was. I repeat, Tanaka said. Withdraw your fleet. Now. Dren recovered his composure with an effort. You think one ship can stand against 40? Your confidence is misplaced, Captain. All vessels, open fire. The Varthan fleet unleashed its fury. Plasma cannons blazed. Missile tubes emptied. Beam weapons sliced through space at the speed of light. More firepower than most species could produce in a year. All concentrated on a single target. The black ship didn't move. The attack struck its hull and simply stopped. Not deflected, not absorbed, not dispersed. They hit the darkness and ceased to exist, as if the ship had consumed them. What? Dren's voice trailed off in disbelief. My turn, said Tanaka. The black ship moved. It should have been impossible for something so large to move so fast, but it accelerated with a speed that defied physics. It shot toward the nearest Varthan cruiser, and Dren expected a collision. Instead, it passed through the cruiser's formation at close range, and something pulsed from its hull. A wave of energy, invisible but devastating, swept through the Varthan ship. Every light went dark. Every system went dead. The cruiser hung in space, completely disabled but structurally intact. The black ship didn't slow down. It swept through the formation like a predator through a flock of prey, disabling ship after ship with pulses of that strange energy. Dren watched in horror as his fleet went dark. One vessel at a time. Fire at will, he screamed. Concentrate all fire on that ship. But the black ship was too fast. It danced between the beams and missiles, always where the Varthan weapons weren't, always arriving at its targets before they could react. In 5 minutes, it had disabled 12 ships. In 10, 24, Dren's communications filled with panicked reports. Engines offline, weapons offline, life support switching to emergency batteries, crews scrambling to restart systems that refused to respond. High Marshal, his tactical officer said, voice trembling. Our shields aren't even slowing it down. Those energy pulses are going through them like they're not there. That's impossible. Yes, sir. But it's happening. The black ship swept through the last of the outer formation, leaving a trail of darkened hulks behind it. Then it slowed, turning toward the center of the Varthan fleet, toward the Eternal Conquest. Dren watched it approach. His flagship was the largest vessel in the fleet, the most heavily armored, the most powerfully armed. It had weapons that could crack planets, shields that could withstand sustained bombardment from a dozen ships. All batteries, he said quietly. Target that vessel. Fire. The Eternal Conquest opened up with everything it had. A storm of destruction poured toward the black ship. Enough firepower to devastate a continent. The black ship flew straight through it. The weapon's fire vanished into its darkness, leaving no trace. And then it was there, directly in front of the Eternal Conquest. close enough that Dren could see the absolute blackness of its hull with his own eyes. Something emerged from the black ship. Dren couldn't see it clearly. Just a distortion in space. A ripple of something that shouldn't exist. It struck his flagship and passed through the shields like they were made of smoke. Every system on the Eternal Conquest died at once. Emergency lighting flickered on. Dren stood in the sudden silence, his scales pale with shock. His entire fleet, 40 warships crewed by the finest soldiers of the Empire, had been disabled in less than 15 minutes. And not a single Varthon had died. The communications panel lit up one last time, running on emergency power. Tanaka's face appeared on the screen again. She looked exactly as calm as she had at the start of the battle. High Marshal Dren, your fleet is disabled but intact. Your crews are alive. Your ships can be repaired. This was mercy. Dren found his voice. What do you want? I told you at the beginning. I want you to leave. Take your fleet, go back to your empire, and tell them what happened here. Tell them that Earth is not defenseless. Tell them that we built this ship to protect ourselves, and we've had it ready for generations. Tell them we showed mercy today, and they should think very carefully before making us decide whether to show it again. You think this changes anything? The Empire will send 100 ships, 1,000. We will burn your world to ash. Perhaps. Tanaka's expression didn't change. But you'll never know if we have more ships like this one. You'll never know if our next generation of weapons will be even more effective. And you'll have to ask yourself, is Earth really worth that risk? She leaned forward slightly. The Vardahan conquered the galaxy because no one could resist you. Today, you met a species that can. Think about what that means. Think about it very carefully. The screen went dark. Dren stood in the emergency lighting of his crippled flagship, surrounded by the drifting hulks of his defeated fleet. For the first time in his career, he had no idea what to do next. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. The galaxy had changed today, and nothing would ever be the same. The news spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. On the homeworld of the Varthon Empire, Emperor Kreith Vor sat in his throne room and watched the recordings that High Marshal Dren had brought back. The footage showed his finest warships going dark one by one. It showed the black ship dancing through his fleet like a predator playing with its food. It showed weapons that defied every law of physics his scientists understood. Explain this, the Emperor said quietly. His chief advisor, an ancient Varthon named Sornvel who had served 3 emperors, stepped forward carefully. Your Majesty, we have analyzed the recordings extensively. The ship appears to use some form of directed electromagnetic disruption, but the mechanism is unlike anything in our databases. Our best scientists cannot explain how it penetrated our shields, and the weapons that struck the ship absorbed completely. Again, we cannot explain the mechanism. The ship's hull appears to be made of materials we cannot identify. Emperor Kreith Vor leaned back in his throne. He was old for a Varthon. His scales faded to a dull gray, but his mind remained sharp. He had ruled the Empire for 200 years, overseeing its greatest expansion, crushing every rebellion, destroying every threat. But this was something new. How long have they had this technology? Unknown, Your Majesty, but based on the sophistication of the systems. Sornvel hesitated. Decades, at minimum, perhaps longer, and we never detected it. The humans have been very careful to appear primitive. Our intelligence services dismissed them as insignificant. It appears that was precisely what they wanted us to believe. The Emperor was silent for a long moment. Around him, the court waited in terrified anticipation. Several officers had already been executed for the failure at Earth. High Marshal Dren himself had barely escaped with his life, saved only by the fact that he had brought valuable intelligence back with him. What do you recommend? The Emperor asked finally. Sornvel took a deep breath. This was the most dangerous moment of his long career. Your Majesty, I recommend negotiation. The court gasped. The Varthon Empire did not negotiate. It conquered. It demanded. It took. Those were the principles that had built their civilization for 5,000 years. Explain yourself, the Emperor said, his voice soft with danger. The humans showed mercy. They disabled our fleet but killed no one. They could have destroyed every ship. They chose not to. Sornvel gestured at the recordings still playing on the screen. This was a message. They were demonstrating their capability while also demonstrating their restraint. They are offering us a choice. A choice between what? Between war that we cannot be certain of winning, and peace that costs us nothing but pride. Emperor Vor stared at his advisor for a long moment. Then he did something that none of his courtiers had ever seen before. He laughed. "You're right, old friend. The humans have played this very well. They hide their weapons for generations, pretend to be harmless, and when we finally move against them, they reveal just enough power to make us reconsider. And then they offer mercy instead of destruction." He shook his head slowly. "They understand us better than we understood them. Your Majesty, if they had destroyed our fleet, we would have had no choice but to retaliate. 100 ships, as High Marshal Dren promised. 1,000. However many it took, the Empire cannot accept such a humiliation." The Emperor stood from his throne and walked to the window, looking out at the vast expanse of his capital city. "But they didn't destroy our fleet. They disabled it and sent it home with a warning. They've given us a way out that doesn't require us to lose face. Then, you will accept their terms? I will consider their terms. Send a message to Earth. Tell them the Emperor wishes to discuss the situation directly. Neutral ground. One representative from each side." The message took hours to travel across the galaxy. The response came back within a day. Earth accepted. The meeting took place at an ancient space station in neutral territory, a relic of the original Galactic Concord that had served as a diplomatic venue for centuries. Emperor Vor did not attend himself. That would have been too great an acknowledgement of Earth's new status. Instead, he sent his oldest son, Crown Prince Soren Kreth, with full authority to negotiate. The human representative was Admiral Chen Wei-Lin. They met in a conference room overlooking a field of stars. The Crown Prince was young by Varthon standards, barely 200 years old, but he carried himself with the arrogance of someone who had never known defeat. Admiral Chen was older, her silver hair swept back from a face lined by decades of responsibility. "I am authorized to negotiate on behalf of the Varthon Empire," the Crown Prince began. "My father wishes to establish terms for peaceful coexistence, as does Earth." Chen settled into her chair with the easy confidence of someone holding the stronger hand. "I'm glad your father is willing to talk instead of fight. It will save lives on both sides. Do not mistake our willingness to negotiate for weakness. I don't. Just as I hope you don't mistake our willingness to negotiate for weakness either." Chen smiled slightly. "We could have destroyed your fleet. We chose not to. That wasn't weakness. It was a decision to show mercy, a decision to demonstrate that we can choose. We built the Morrigan to protect ourselves, not to conquer others. We showed your fleet that we could defeat them, but we also showed that defeating them doesn't require killing them." Chen leaned forward. "That's the kind of species we want to be, strong enough to defend ourselves, controlled enough to not abuse that strength." The Crown Prince considered this. "My father finds this philosophy puzzling. I'm sure he does. The Varthon have spent 5,000 years conquering everyone who was weaker than you. You've never had to think about restraint because you've never met anyone who could force you to restrain yourselves." Chen spread her hands. "Now you have, and you're discovering that there might be more to civilization than just being the biggest predator in the jungle. You speak boldly for someone whose species joined the galaxy only 2 centuries ago. I speak honestly. That's different." Chen pulled out a datapad. "Here are our terms. Mutual non-aggression treaty. Trade relations on equal terms. Cultural exchange if both sides are interested. And a simple agreement. Leave Earth alone, and we'll leave you alone." "That's all?" "That's all. We don't want your empire. We don't want your territory. We just want to be left in peace to develop on our own terms." Chen paused. "But I should be clear about one thing. If you threaten Earth again, if you threaten any world that has asked for our protection, the next battle will not be fought with restraint. The Morrigan is just one ship. We've been building for a long time." The Crown Prince studied her face, looking for signs of bluff. He found none. "I will present your terms to my father. I hope he accepts them. I genuinely do. War between our peoples would be catastrophic for everyone, but peace between us." Chen smiled again, more warmly this time. Peace could change the galaxy for the better. The negotiations took 3 more days. There were arguments about specific terms, disputes about wording, moments when it seemed the whole process might collapse. But in the end, the treaty was signed. The Varthon Empire and Earth agreed to peace. The news reached the Galactic Concord within hours. Species that had watched the crisis unfold now struggled to understand what it meant. The Varthon had never backed down from a conquest. They had never negotiated with a species they intended to subjugate. And yet here they were, signing a treaty with primitives they had dismissed as insignificant. On a dozen worlds, diplomats and military officers pulled up everything they could find about humanity. They studied Earth's history, its culture, its technology. They searched for any hint of the weapons that had defeated the Varthon fleet. They found nothing. The humans had hidden their secrets very well, but they found something else. They found a species that had spent its entire history fighting itself, then learning to cooperate. A species that had developed weapons capable of ending all life on its planet, then chosen not to use them. A species that had reached the stars and pretended to be harmless, while quietly building the most advanced warship the galaxy had ever seen. And they found a species that, when given the power to destroy its enemies, had chosen mercy instead. On the Concord's capital world, Ambassador Krell Tess of the Meridian Federation read the intelligence reports and felt something she had not felt in centuries of diplomatic service. Hope. Send a message to Earth, she told her aide. Tell them the Meridian Federation would like to discuss a mutual defense agreement. I think it's time we got to know our human neighbors a little better. Similar messages went out from a dozen other worlds. Species that had lived under the shadow of Varthon expansion for millennia suddenly saw a new possibility. A power that could stand against the Empire. A power that chose restraint over destruction. A power that might change everything. On Earth, President Santos read the incoming diplomatic traffic and allowed herself a rare smile. The plan had worked. 6 generations of secret preparation. Decades of pretending to be weak. And now humanity had emerged as a force to be reckoned with. Admiral Chen is returning from the negotiations, her aide reported. The treaty with the Varthon is signed. I know. I've read it. Santos looked up at the stars through her window. And now the real work begins. Madam President, we've shown the galaxy that we're not victims. Now we have to show them what we actually are. What we want to be. She turned away from the window. Schedule a meeting with the Meridian ambassador. And reach out to the other species who have contacted us. It's time to start building something new. The age of hiding was over. The age of building had begun. 5 years had passed since the Battle of Earth. Captain Yuki Tanaka stood on the observation deck of the Morrigan, watching the stars drift past. The ship was in deep space, far from any inhabited system, running routine patrols along the border of Varthon territory. It was quiet duty, the kind that gave her too much time to think. The galaxy had changed in those 5 years, changed in ways that even the architects of the Morrigan project had never anticipated. It had started with the Meridian Federation. They were the first to reach out after the battle, seeking an alliance with the species that had humiliated the Varthon Empire. Earth had accepted, carefully, establishing mutual defense agreements and trade relationships. The Meridians had technology to share. Earth had the Morrigan's secrets, though they shared those very selectively. Then came the Keth Collective, a species that had been paying tribute to the Varthon for 3 centuries. They saw Earth's victory as a sign that resistance was possible, and they wanted to be part of whatever humanity was building. Earth accepted them too. Then came the Sorvan, and the Delith, and the crystalline mines of Proxima 7, species after species, some looking for protection, some looking for trade, some simply curious about the beings who had built a ship that could defeat an empire. Earth welcomed them all. Captain, Commander Okonkwo's voice came through the intercom. You have a priority message from Earth Command. Tanaka made her way to the bridge, where her first officer was waiting with a concerned expression. What is it? The Keth homeworld? They're under attack? Tanaka felt her stomach tighten. Vartan? No. Someone new. Species we've never encountered. They came out of nowhere, destroyed the orbital defenses, and began landing troops. The Keth are asking for help. Tanaka closed her eyes for a moment, thinking. The Morrigan was 2 days from the Keth homeworld at maximum speed. 2 days during which untold millions might die. Set course, she ordered. Maximum speed. And get me Admiral Chen on a secure channel. 20 minutes later, Chen's face appeared on the screen. The Admiral looked tired. Leading Earth's new interstellar alliance was demanding work. Captain Tanaka, I assume you've heard about the Keth. Yes, Admiral. We're en route now. Who are these attackers? They call themselves the Hierarchy. They're from the far side of the galaxy, beyond Varthon space. It seems they've been expanding in this direction for centuries. And they've finally reached territory we care about. Chen's expression was grim. They make the Varthon look gentle by comparison. Understood. Rules of engagement? Chen was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was heavy with responsibility. The Keth are our allies. They came to us for protection, and we promise to provide it. Do whatever is necessary to save them, even if that means you can't show mercy this time. Yes. Chen met her eyes through the screen. I wish I could give you different orders, but the Keth are counting on us. And if we fail them, every other species in our alliance will lose faith in our protection. Do what needs to be done. Understood, Admiral. 2 days later, the Morrigan dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Keth system. The tactical display immediately lit up with warnings. 30 Hierarchy warships surrounded the Keth homeworld. They were massive vessels, even larger than Varthon cruisers, bristling with weapons that scanned as primitive but powerful. Kinetic weapons, plasma cannons, nuclear missiles, brute force technology, but deployed in overwhelming quantity. And on the planet below, cities were burning. Captain, Lieutenant Commander Obi's voice was tight with anger. They're conducting planetary bombardment, targeting civilian population centers. Tanaka stared at the display. The Hierarchy ships weren't precise in their attacks. They were simply burning everything, killing millions to suppress any possibility of resistance. Open a channel to the Hierarchy fleet. Channel open. Hierarchy vessels. This is Captain Yuki Tanaka of the Earthship Morrigan. You are attacking a world under our protection. Cease fire immediately and withdraw, or face the consequences. The response came in a harsh, grating voice. Unknown vessel. You are interfering in Hierarchy business. The inferior species of this world have been judged and found wanting. Their extinction is decreed. Do not interfere, or you will share their fate. Tanaka cut the channel and looked at her crew. Their faces were set, determined, angry. They all knew what was happening on the planet below. They've made their choice, she said quietly. Now we make ours. She took a deep breath. All hands. Battle stations. Weapons free. No restrictions. The Morrigan surged into the Hierarchy fleet like a storm breaking over mountains. This time, there was no restraint. The gravity weapons that had merely disabled Varthon ships now tore Hierarchy vessels apart. The electromagnetic pulses that had darkened systems now overloaded reactors, causing catastrophic failures. The main weapon, the device they had hoped never to use, erased entire ships from existence in flashes of impossible light. The battle lasted 8 minutes. When it was over, 23 Hierarchy ships had been destroyed. The remaining 7 fled into faster-than-light travel, trailing debris and distress signals. The Morrigan hung alone in space, surrounded by the wreckage of its enemies. Tanaka sat in her chair, staring at the display. Thousands of Hierarchy crew had died in those 8 minutes. She had given the orders that killed them. Captain, Okonkwo's voice was gentle. The Keth are hailing us. They want to thank you. Put them through. The face of the Keth leader appeared on screen. Her features were insectoid, with multiple eyes that glistened with what might have been tears. Captain Tanaka, you came. When the Hierarchy attacked, we feared. We feared we would die alone. But you came. We promised to protect you. We keep our promises. The Hierarchy. They destroyed so much. So many of our cities, our people. I know. I'm sorry we couldn't get here faster. The Keth leader shook her head slowly. You came. That is what matters. When we joined your alliance, many of our people doubted. They said humans were young, untested, that we were foolish to trust species who had only been in space for 2 centuries. She paused, composing herself. They were wrong. Today, you proved that humans do not abandon their friends. Today, you proved that your protection is real. After the conversation ended, Tanaka remained on the bridge for a long time. The weight of what she had done pressed down on her shoulders like a physical burden. Commander Okonkwo approached quietly. Captain, are you all right? No. Tanaka didn't look at him. I just killed thousands of living beings. I'm not all right. I may never be all right again. You saved millions of Keth. I know, and I would make the same choice again. That's what makes it terrible. She finally turned to face her first officer. When we fought the Varthon, we showed them that strength doesn't have to mean destruction. We showed them that victory doesn't have to mean death. I was proud of that battle, proud of what we represented. And today, I learned that mercy has limits. Sometimes, when you're protecting the people who trust you, you don't have the luxury of being gentle. Tanaka stood, straightening her uniform. The Morrigan was built to be humanity's last argument. Today, we proved that when the argument fails, we can fight, we can kill, we can destroy our enemies completely. She walked to the main viewport and looked out at the stars. I hope the hierarchy tells their people what happened here. I hope they spread the word across the galaxy. Earth protects its friends. Cross us, and we will show you mercy if we can. Her voice hardened. But if mercy isn't an option, we will show you something else entirely. 1 year later, Captain Tanaka stood at the launching ceremony for humanity's newest ship. It was smaller than the Morrigan, sleeker, designed for speed rather than raw power. One of a dozen being built in the secret shipyards that had produced the original black ship. Admiral Chen stood beside her, watching as the vessel slid out of its construction bay. We've come a long way, Chen said. 6 generations ago we were alone and afraid. Now we lead an alliance of 20 species, and the Varthon Empire sends us diplomatic messages instead of ultimatums. The hierarchy hasn't bothered us since the battle at Keth, Tanaka added. Word got around about what happened to their fleet. It did. They've actually started negotiating with species they would have simply conquered before. Apparently, the possibility of meeting another Morrigan has made them reconsider their approach. Tanaka smiled slightly. Then maybe all of this was worth it. Maybe. Chen turned to face her. I never properly thanked you, Captain, for everything you and your crew did, for everything you sacrificed. We did what we were built to do. Literally, in my case. You did more than that. You showed the galaxy that there's another way. Not just strength, but the wisdom to use strength carefully. Not just power, but the restraint to wield it responsibly. Chen looked back at the new ship being launched. That's what humanity offers the galaxy. Not just protection, but a model. A demonstration that you can be powerful without being tyrannical. Do you think they understand that? Some of them. More every year. Chen smiled. The universe is full of predators, Captain. Species that believe might makes right. That the strong exist to rule the weak. We're showing them something different. We're showing them that the strongest thing you can do is choose when not to use your strength. Tanaka thought about that as she watched the new ship disappear into the void. 6 generations of preparation had created the Morrigan. Now humanity was building more ships, training more crews, expanding their ability to protect the species that had chosen to trust them. The galaxy was changing. Slowly, carefully, one decision at a time, and humanity was leading the way. In her quarters that night, Tanaka looked at the photograph she kept on her desk. It showed her mother, standing in the Morrigan's construction bay all those years ago, holding a child who would one day become the ship's captain. We did it, she whispered to the photograph. We built something that could protect us, and then we used it to protect others. I hope you're proud. The photograph didn't answer, of course, but somehow, Tanaka felt that her mother was smiling. Outside her window, the stars burned on, unchanged and unchanging. But the beings who looked up at those stars had changed. They had learned that strength and mercy could exist together, that power and restraint were not opposites but partners. They had learned what humanity really was, and the galaxy would never forget.